because one of the questions that came in was, someone asked me to do a training on diversity. I've never done one before. I just happen to be a person of color, so of course they thought I could do a diversity workshop, and I don't know where to start. And so a couple things. One is I would start and go back and talk to the leaders or the person that asked you to do it and ask them some basic questions like, where do you think the organization wants all employees to be? What kinds of skills, knowledge, capacities do we want them all to be able to do? And then where do you think they are now? And if they can break that down maybe by level, leaders, middle managers, entry-level folks, folks that have maybe 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. Now, you don't have to do all of this, but you really want the person that asked you, or if you can get in front of the leaders, to have them really assess. And I don't mean formal assessment, but to say, here's where I think our folks are. Here's the vision I have. Here's our strategic plan. Here's where we want people to be. And so we'd like you to do all that in 45 minutes. So then you can negotiate, well, in 45 minutes, I'll come back to you, but here's what I can do. But if they really say we have an hour, you may want to see if you can do a series. Most organizations, I hope, will realize that these skills, just like budgeting, just like supervision, are long-term investments in people that happen over time. And especially equity, inclusion, diversity. People come in with all sorts of predetermined ideas, feelings, life experiences. We all have implicit bias, those prejudice stereotypes that we were taught and are still reinforced in society and the media everywhere. And so these workshops are different than learning how to do budgeting, though people come in with triggers around budgeting and fear. But it's even more when you start talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. And so one shot, 1 hours, what you can do in those is what's the business case, the leadership case, why it's important, maybe some what could you do if. And so creative designs. So when I think about a design, I want to make sure I warm people up. You have the middle of the workshop kind of a play. There's act one, you warm people up. Why are you here? Maybe a leader introducing. Here's why we're here. Here's how it relates to the strategic plan. Here's our expectations of you. And when you go back, we want you to meet with your supervisor and talk about what you've learned. Introducing you, and you can tell some stories about where you used to be, how you used to be less aware, less skilled, what happened, and maybe a little more about your capacity. But I think it's great as facilitators and trainers if we design in a story that really shows how recently we were not very effective, but we quickly learned, and now we're more effective today. Because you want to design in not, I'm the expert and I'm teaching you everything, but in fact, I'm just like you, I'm on a learning journey, and we're on this learning journey together. And so early in the design workshop, getting people moving, reflecting on the current state. I like to do things, talk about a time you really felt you mattered in an organization, and what was it that helped you feel valued and respected. Talk about a time you felt marginalized, and what was that? Again, no names. Have people tell those stories, and maybe groups of 3, and then hear them out. What you're doing is creating the container for authentic conversation, engagement, telling stories. That's what I think is creative about designs. You know, when I started out 35 years ago, I would find a really fun activity and think I could just do it. I didn't strategically think, where are the participants? How ready are they? How willing are they emotionally to engage in the level of work they need to do? And what's their current capacity? Because you could be willing and want to learn, but if you're very early, say a scale of 0 to 10, 0 is know nothing and respond to every kind of diversity dynamic. 10 is I know everything, really, and I'm very effective. I still need to learn more, but I'm pretty effective. Many people in the workshops that I do will say they're 6, 7, 8, but once I start working them, they're maybe 2, 3, 4, and I think that's a pretty good guess of where people are. And so when you're designing creatively, getting to know who they are, what the leaders want, and then what kind of activities. And so the course I'll be doing will probably have, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 different activities that we'll talk about. But mostly it's about scaffolding the learning in ways that keep people engaged. Pretty early, I might give them a list of 10 critical, difficult situations, microaggressions that happen in your organization. You can collect those from your colleagues, from employee resource groups, from customers. take all the names out, all the indicators of who it is, but an early icebreaker, what I call that motivation grabber. Why do we need to be in this workshop? After they warm up a bit, then you could put them in some quick small groups and say, pick one, and how confident do you feel, confident and competent that you could respond very effectively in the situation, and write down what you might do. And what I think they'll find is a couple, but some of them they'll be, but you don't have to make them stand up and tell you how they would do it. It's just helping them see and say, these are the kind of situations we're going to talk about today, so that we can create inclusive work environments and serve our increasingly diverse customers and help them be much more effective serving our customers.